We're gonna get this party started. We're gonna get this party started. We're gonna get this party started. It's a Bible reading party. We're gonna get this party started. We're gonna get this party started. We're gonna get this party started. It's a Bible reading party. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Gonna get this party started. Good morning. Do you know what day it is? It is Monday. Do you know that the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, did you know that the last eight uploads, excuse me, not uploads. Did you guys know that the last reading, focus for me, focus. There we go. Did you guys realize that the last 8 or so readings have the wrong thumbnail on there? Probably not. The titles are right, but the last 8 or so uploads have had Colossians on there. I know that's not really focusing properly, but yeah, I gotta go in there and I gotta correct all that. As soon as I started the live stream today, I'm looking like, why does that say Colossians? And I looked and I said, oh, almost all of them say Colossians. So I got to go back in there. You guys got to keep me on my toes and say, hey, Kenya, did you know your thumbnail says Colossians and we're in 2 Corinthians? Then I'll say, oh, no, I didn't know that. And then I can go in there and change it. That's okay. The time is now. Hello, early birds. Pink Strawberry's in the house. Good morning, Pink Strawberry. Good morning, The Wiz. Good morning, Nicole. Early bird. Pink Strawberry's the early bird today. Hello, The Wiz. Good morning, Kenya. Good morning, 40 fam. Hey, 40 fam. And bless the like button. Yes, yes, yes. Before you forget, warm them palms up. Warm up them palms and bless the like button so that other people can find this live stream. It is now 7:16 a.m. Monday morning. That sounds so silly. Hold on, my voice cracked. I got to drink some water. It is now Monday morning. It is 7:16 a.m. in Texas. I don't know where you are, but I'm in Texas. And right now, for me, in Fort Worth, Texas, it is 7:17 a.m. It is July 20th, 2020. And we have just began week 30. Today is week 30 of reading the Bible. Oh, yes, it is week 30 of reading the Bible. And according to my Kindle book study guide, we are reading 2 Chronicles, chapters 28, 29, and 30 today. So that's how that goes. And let's all get on the same page. I got to stop ducking my head down here. There we go. Move the laptop closer, Kenya. Don't move towards the laptop. Move the laptop towards you. Ding, ding, ding. Let's see what's on Kenya's screen, shall we? Let's. Here we go. Week 30. And the theme of this week, because as you know, every week there's a different theme going on. The theme of this week is return and rebuilding. Return and rebuilding. Let's take a quick sneak peek back at what we were talking about last week. Last week was Good Kings, Bad Kings. That's week 29, Good Kings, Bad Kings. And this week is return and rebuilding. And it says here, despite the reforms of Hezekiah and Josiah, the hearts and practices of the people of Judah remained far from God. As the prophets had warned, destruction and exile resulted. Let me take a quick pause for the calls. I want to make sure I've got a good, strong live stream, because last week I got put in a pickle with some very choppiness. So I'm going to record this while I'm live streaming. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just thought about that. Before I go too far, I want to record this just in case YouTube is giving me some hoops to climb through and some hurdles to jump over. Okay, as I was saying, we're in week 30. The theme is return and rebuilding. And this it says here, despite the reforms of Hezekiah and Josiah, the hearts and practices of the people of Judah remained far from God. As the prophets had warned, destruction and exile resulted, but God remained faithful as he always had. Babylon fell to Persia in 539 BC. And Second Chronicles ends with a proclamation by King Cyrus of Persia, releasing the Jews to return home to rebuild the temple. Paul's letter to the church at Thessalonica in Greece encouraged the young congregation to stand firm despite opposition and persecution. Paul had started this church, but had not been able to spend much time there. Paul delivers a lot of teaching on many topics in these short letters, including details about Jesus' second coming. The book of Ezra documents the return of the exiles to Judah, the rebuilding and dedication of the temple in 515 BC, and the reforms Ezra instituted when he arrived about 60 years later. Zerubbabel, the grandson of King Jehoiakim, led the first returning exiles back to Judah and began rebuilding the temple despite interference from people living in the land. So let's turn this digital page and see what's going on here. And before I get done, I will show the cover for anybody who has not seen this guide before. In the gold box, you will see the word read in the left side, and on the right side, you will see checkpoint. So this is what I will be reading this week. 2 Chronicles 28 through 30 today. 2 Chronicles 31 through 33 tomorrow. 2 Chronicles 34 through 36 on Wednesday. By Thursday, I will be reading 1 Thessalonians 1 through 5, which looks like the entire book. And by Friday, I will be reading 2 Thessalonians 1 through 3, which looks like another book. And by Saturday, I will be reading Ezra 1 through 3. And Sunday, I will be reading Ezra 4 through 6. That is how this week is going to go. In the meantime, in between time, keep your ears perked up for these checkpoints, because at some point, I'm going to mention something about a closed temple, a thief in the night, the lawless one, a search of the archives, and a joyful Passover. Those are the checkpoints that are going to be distributed between those 3 books that I'm going to be reading this week. And here's a quote from Immanuel Kant, who says, "The existence of the Bible as a book for the people is the greatest benefit the human race has ever experienced. Every attempt to belittle it is a crime against humanity." That is what Immanuel Kant says. And let's take a look at the cover of this book that I'm using. This is what I downloaded, I want to say December 31st, maybe January 1st. This is available as a printed book as well, but I just happen to have the downloaded Kindle version. The author is Diane Storch, and the title is A Woman's Guide to Reading the Bible in a Year, a life-changing journey into the heart of God. And that's how that works. It's a digital download. I go through, I see which week that I'm on. Actually, it picks up wherever you leave off, so you don't have to turn the page every time. But yes, this is how it's laid out, week 1, week 2, all the way down through week 52. And here I am right here at the bottom, return and building. Let's see. That is the wrong website. Here we go. This live stream is brought to you by The Bible in 1 Year. That is the number 1. The Bible in 1 Year, number 1, because I am challenging myself to read the Bible every day as my New Year's resolution for 2020. And I decided to make this handy dandy website to help you and encourage others to read the Bible, maybe not in an entire year, but just to read the Bible every day. If you read the Bible every day, it is very possible to read it in a year. Actually, from my research, I've learned you can read the Bible in one sitting if you read straight for 70 hours. So if you read for an hour a day, that's 70 days. So yes, it is very possible to read through the entire Bible in a short amount of time. On this website, I give you options to give a Bible if you are feeling charitable and generous. There's a link that is not affiliated with me to donate a Bible to those in need. There's another link here if you want to purchase a Bible. That is an affiliate link, which means if you decide to buy a Bible through that link, through no extra cost to you, I can get a small commission. I'm writing a blog. Yes, a blog on reading the Bible. I just uploaded this latest one yesterday. I'm going to try to make sure that I upload this weekly to give some fresh content and resources to add value to people's lives as they are challenging themselves to read the Bible. This is a short list, top 12 games that you can download on your mobile device as you're reading the Bible. And it's some fun stuff for you to help reinforce and challenge yourself and test what you are actually reading. And finally, we got the resources page on the Bible in 1 year. And on this resources page, you will find other resources. There are links embedded within each of these sections here that will help you get your mind right as you're reading the Bible, get your environment right so you don't have any distractions. Boost your memory recall. That is actually something new on here. I was listening to the radio on the way home last week, and on public radio, there was a broadcast by the People's Pharmacy, which is on public radio. And Jim Quick, who is an entrepreneur that works on, he builds services and products to help people learn faster and better. And if you scroll down, you will find in this section here an audio clip, because I was quick enough, no pun intended, I was quick enough to turn on my phone and record a portion of that audio clip that does not belong to me. That is from the People's Pharmacy on National Public Radio. So this is about a 17-minute listen, and they give some really, really good tips and tricks on what you can do to boost your memory and increase your learning. Of course, there's some study plans on here, different ways to read the Bible in a year. And yeah, check that out when you get a chance. Let me know what I can add to this website to improve it and to help other people learn how to read through the Bible. With that being said, let's come on back to the live stream. Oops. Am I back? Yes, I'm back. Let me come on back to the live stream to make sure I don't miss anybody. All right, I got 4 folks watching and 2 likes. Let me get 2 more likes and I'm going to get started. Well, I'm going to get started anyways. This is my Bible. This is what I use to read the Bible. This is my Bible that I actually use. Oh yeah, it looks a little bit choppy. I might have to do an upload. We'll see. Let me know if things are choppy or if they're smooth. And if they're not looking too hot, then I'll go ahead and I'll upload the version that I'm actually recording right now. And for those of you who are just now coming in, the time is now 7:27 a.m. for the people who are watching this recorded. It is 7:27 a.m. on Monday morning. It is July 20th, 2020. We're in week 30 of reading the Bible. This is my Bible. It is the New Believer's Bible Compact Version, First Steps for New Christians, New Living Translation. This is my Bible dictionary that I use on occasion. It is the Nelson's Compact Dictionary. And yes, I use this on occasion as well. Both of these pieces of literature are in the description. You can follow a link to get your own, and the link to that study guide that I'm using, Diane Stortz's A Woman's Guide to Reading the Bible in the Year. It is also in the description box. So yes, make sure you guys read the description box, because I try to remember after every Bible reading to put in a summary. I will summarize it whenever I can. And along with the summary, you will find links to these resources here. 2 Chronicles. Hope everybody had a great weekend. I slept a lot. That's what I did. I got a lot of rest. I got a whole lot of rest. I need to change this really quick because it still says week 29. So let me just update that really quick. Okay, there we go. Week 30. 28 through 30. All right. Oh, looks like we lost somebody. Maybe they'll come back. In the meantime, I'm going to do a recap of yesterday. All right, yesterday was chapters 25, 26, and 27. And in chapter 25, Amaziah ruled in Judah. Amaziah, 25-year-old Amaziah ruled in Judah. Chapter 26, Uzziah ruled in Judah. He started off as a 16-year-old king. Uzziah's sin and punishment. Uzziah had a lot of success. Uzziah was doing very well for himself. He became proud of his accomplishments, and his pride led him to bypass the priests, the Levites, priests, who were the only people who were supposed to go into the temple to light those incense. He went in there full of bravado, chest sticking out, puffed up, and he lit those incense himself. The Levite priest ran in and said, you probably said, "Your Royal Highness, you can't do this." He got angry at them. And his anger and his pride caused the Lord to strike him. And at that moment, he was afflicted with leprosy. That's what happened in chapter 26. In chapter 27, Jotham ruled in Judah. Jotham was 25 when he became king, and seems like Jotham did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, but the people were still pretty corrupt from the inclusion and the addition of some pagan idolatry going on. That leads us to today, which is chapter 28. Starting now, Ahaz. Ahaz rules in Judah. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. He did not do what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestor David had done. Instead, he followed the example of the kings of Israel. He cast metal images for the worship of Baal. He offered sacrifices. He even sacrificed his own sons in the fire. In this way, he followed the detestable practices of the pagan nations the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the pagan shrines and on the hills and under every green tree. Because of all this, the Lord his God allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz and to exile large numbers of his people to Damascus. The armies of the king of Israel also defeated Ahaz and inflicted many casualties on his army. In a single day, Pekah, son of Remaliah, Israel's king, killed 120,000 of Judah's troops, all of them experienced warriors, because they had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Then Zikri, a warrior from Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, Azrikam, the king's palace commander, and Elkanah, the king's second in command. The armies of Israel captured 200,000 women and children from Judah and seized tremendous amounts of plunder, which they took back to Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord named Oded was there in Samaria when the army of Israel returned home. He went out to meet them and said, "The Lord, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah and let you defeat them. But you've gone too far, killing them without mercy, and all heaven is disturbed. And now you're planning to make slaves of these people from Judah and Jerusalem. What about your own sins against the Lord your God? Listen to me and return these prisoners you've taken, for they are your own relatives. Watch out, because now the Lord's fierce anger has been turned against you." Then some of the leaders of Israel, Azariah, son of Jehohanan, Berechiah, son of Meshilmoth, Jehizkiah, son of Shallum, and Amasa, son of Hadlai, agreed with this and confronted the men returning from battle. "You must not bring the prisoners here," they declared. "We cannot afford to add to our sins and guilt. Our guilt is already great, and the Lord's fierce anger is already turned against Israel." So the warriors released the prisoners and handed over the plunder in the sight of the leaders and all the people. Then the 4 men just mentioned, by name, came forward and distributed clothes from the plunder to the prisoners who were naked. They, providing clothing and sandals to wear, gave them enough food and drink and dressed their wounds with olive oil. They put those who were weak on donkeys and took all the prisoners back to their own people in Jericho, the city of palms. Then they returned to Samaria. Verse 16 says, Ahaz closes the temple. At that time, King Ahaz of Judah asked the king of Assyria for help. The armies of Edom had again invaded Judah and taken captives, and the Philistines had raided towns located in the foothills of Judah and in the Negev of Judah. They had already captured and occupied Beth Shemesh, Aijalon, Gederoth, Soko with its villages, Timnah with its villages, and Gimzo with its villages. The Lord was humbling Judah because of King Ahaz of Judah, for he had encouraged his people to sin and had been utterly unfaithful to the Lord. So when King Tiglath-Pileser, I can never say that one, Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria arrived, he attacked Ahaz instead of helping him. Ahaz took valuable items from the Lord's temple, the royal palace, and from the homes of his officials and gave them to the king of Assyria as tribute. But this did not help him. Even during this time of trouble, King Ahaz continued to reject the Lord. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus, who had defeated him, for he said, "Since these gods helped the kings of Aram, they will help me too if I sacrifice to them." But instead they led to his ruin and the ruin of all Judah. The king took the various articles from the temple of God and broke them into pieces. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple so that no one could worship there, and he set up altars to pagan gods in every corner of Jerusalem. He made pagan shrines in all the towns of Judah for offering sacrifices to other gods. In this way he aroused the anger of the Lord, the God of his ancestors. The rest of the events of Ahaz's reign and everything he did from beginning to end are recorded in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. When Ahaz died, he was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the royal cemetery of the kings of Judah. Then his son Hezekiah became the next king. That is chapter 28 of 2 Chronicles. The last couple of weeks I've been trying to abstain from putting in too much of my own commentary because I felt it was being a little bit of a distraction. But I do have one question/commentary. King Ahaz as leader, not president. King Ahaz as leader. He's the king. He is over everybody, and it's his responsibility not only to rule the nation, but to inspire and be a good example of the people of how to worship. When I'm reading here in verse 23, he offered sacrifices to gods, lowercase g, of Damascus who had defeated him, for he said, "Since these gods helped the kings of Aram, they will help me too if I sacrifice to them." But instead they led to his ruin and the ruin of all Judah. It's making me think when I read, but instead they led to his ruin and the ruin of all Judah. It makes me wonder how much influence, spiritual influence, the leaders of all nations have. When leaders rule a certain way, the nation is definitely affected financially, politically, sometimes geographically, depending on if they need to change the boundary lines and things like that. But I'm just wondering, as I'm reading about this spiritual influence that the leader made the mistake and he led everybody to ruin. It's making me wonder in my own situation here in the year 2020, how my leaders, governors, mayors, Congress people, and even the president, how their actions are affecting the nation spiritually. If you think it has an impact on us spiritually or none whatsoever, let me know. Leave your opinion in the live chat or in the comment after the fact. Just curious, and that thought just came to me as I was reading this here in 2nd Chronicles, chapter 28, and particularly verse 23, based off of King Ahaz's behavior and activities. Now let's move on to chapter 29, because Hezekiah rules in Judah. This is one of my favorite ones here. Hezekiah was 25. It's a nice age, 25. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became the king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. He did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestor David had done. Verse 3 says, Hezekiah reopens the temple. In the very first month of the year of his reign, Hezekiah reopened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. He summoned the priests and Levites to meet him at the courtyard east of the temple. He said to them, "Listen to me, you Levites. Purify yourselves and purify the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove all the defiled things from the sanctuary. Our ancestors were unfaithful and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord our God. They abandoned the Lord in his dwelling place. They turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors to the temple's entry room, and they snuffed out the lamps. They stopped burning incense and presenting burnt offerings at the sanctuary of the God of Israel. That is why the Lord's anger has fallen upon Judah and Jerusalem. He made them an object of dread, horror, and ridicule, as you can see with your own eyes. Because of this, our fathers have been killed in battle, and our sons and daughters and wives have been captured. Now I will make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not neglect your duties any longer. The Lord has chosen you to stand in his presence, to minister to him, and to lead the people in worship and present offerings to him." Then the Levites got right to work. From the clan of Kohath, Mahath, son of Amasai, and Joel, son of Azariah. From the clan of Merari, Kish, son of Abdi, and Azariah, son of Jehalalel. From the clan of Gershon, Joah, son of Zima, and Etan, son of Joah. From the family of Elizaphan, Shimri, and Jael. From the family of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah. From the family of Heman, Jehiel and Shimei. From the family of Jeduthun, Shemaiah and Uzziel. These men called together their fellow Levites, and they all purified themselves. Then they began to cleanse the temple of the Lord, just as the king had commanded. They were careful to follow all the Lord's instructions in their work. The priests went into the sanctuary of the temple of the Lord to cleanse it, and they took out to the temple courtyard all the defiled things they found. From there, the Levites carted it all out to the Kidron Valley. They began the work in early spring on the first day of the new year, and in 8 days they had reached the entry room of the Lord's temple. Then they purified the temple of the Lord itself, which took another 8 days. So the entire task was completed in 16 days. Love your commentary and your descriptive style of reading. Why, thank you very much. I still try to keep it to a minimum, because this is a Bible reading, not a Bible teaching. I'm definitely not teaching. I'm only reading and giving a little bit of my own opinion. Verse 18 says, the Temple Rededication. Then the Levites went to King Hezekiah and gave him this report. We have cleansed the entire temple of the Lord, the altar of the burnt offering with all its utensils, and the table of the bread of the presence with all its utensils. We have also recovered all the items discarded by King Ahaz when he was unfaithful and closed the temple. They are now in front of the altar of the Lord, purified and ready for use. Early the next morning, King Hezekiah gathered the city officials and went to the temple of the Lord. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, and 7 male lambs as a burnt offering, together with 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the temple, and for Judah. The king commanded the priests, who were descendants of Aaron, to sacrifice the animals on the altar of the Lord. So they killed the bulls, and the priests took the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. Next, they killed the rams and sprinkled their blood on the altar. And finally, they did the same with the male lambs. The male goats for the sin offering were then brought before the king and the assembly of the people who laid their hands on them. The priests then killed the goats as a sin offering and sprinkled their blood on the altar to make atonement for the sins of all of Israel. The king had specifically commanded that this burnt offering and the sin offering should be made for all Israel. King Hezekiah then stationed the Levites at the temple of the Lord with cymbals, lyres, and harps. He obeyed all the commands that the Lord had given to King David through Gad, the king's seer, and the prophet Nathan. The Levites then took their positions around the temple with the instruments of David, and the priests took their positions with the trumpets. Then Hezekiah ordered that the burnt offerings be placed on the altar. As the burnt offering was presented, songs of praise to the Lord were begun, accompanied by the trumpets and other instruments of David, the former king of Israel. The entire assembly worshiped the Lord as the singers sang and the trumpets blew until all the burnt offerings were finished. Then the king and everyone with him bowed down in worship. King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to praise the Lord with the psalms written by David and Asaph the seer. So they offered joyous praise and bowed down in worship. Then Hezekiah declared, "Now that you have consecrated yourselves to the Lord, bring your sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings to the temple of the Lord." So the people brought their sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings, and all whose hearts were willing brought burnt offerings too. The people brought to the Lord 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 male lambs for the burnt offerings. They also brought 600 cattle and 3,000 sheep and goats as sacred offerings. But there were too few priests to prepare all the burnt offerings, so their relatives, the Levites, helped them until the work was finished, and more priests had been purified, for the Levites had been more conscientious about purifying themselves than the priests had been. Then there was an abundance of burnt offerings, along with the usual liquid offerings, and a great deal of fat from the many peace offerings. So the temple of the Lord was restored to service, and Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had done for the people, for everything had been accomplished so quickly. That was chapter 29 of 2 Chronicles. And now, for your listening pleasure, chapter 30 of 2 Chronicles. This is the preparations for Passover. King Hezekiah now sent word to all Israel and Judah, and he wrote letters of invitation to the people of Ephraim and Manasseh. He asked everyone to come to the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The king, his officials, and all the community of Jerusalem decided to celebrate Passover a month later than usual. They were unable to celebrate it at the prescribed time because not enough priests could be purified by then, and the people had not yet assembled at Jerusalem. This plan for keeping the Passover seemed right to the king and all the people. So they sent a proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north, inviting everyone to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The people had not been celebrating it in great numbers as required in law. At the king's command, runners were sent throughout Israel and Judah. They carried letters that said, "O people of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he will return to the few of us who have survived the conquest of the Assyrian kings. Do not be like your ancestors and relatives who abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and became an object of derision, as you yourselves can see. Do not be stubborn as they were, but submit yourselves to the Lord. Come to his temple, which he has set apart as holy forever. Worship the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. For if you return to the Lord, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you." And now the celebration of Passover in verse 10. The runners went from town to town throughout Ephraim and Manasseh and as far as the territory of Zebulun. But most of the people just laughed at the runners and made fun of them. However, some people from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. At the same time, God's hand was on the people in the land of Judah, giving them all one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of the Lord. So a huge crowd assembled at Jerusalem in mid-spring to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. They set to work and removed the pagan altars from Jerusalem. They took away all the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. On the 14th day of the second month, 1 month later than usual, the people slaughtered the Passover lamb. This shamed the priests and Levites. So they purified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took their places at the temple as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The Levites brought the sacrificial blood to the priests, who then sprinkled it on the altar. Since many of the people had not purified themselves, the Levites had to slaughter their Passover lamb for them to set them apart for the Lord. Most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves. But King Hezekiah prayed for them, and they were allowed to eat the Passover meal anyway, even though this was contrary to the requirements of the law. For Hezekiah said, "May the Lord who is good pardon those who decide to follow the Lord, the God of their ancestors, even though they are not properly cleansed for the ceremony." And the Lord listened to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. So the people of Israel who were present in Jerusalem joyously celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. Each day, the Levites and priests sang to the Lord, accompanied by loud instruments. Hezekiah encouraged all the Levites regarding the skill they displayed as they served the Lord. The celebration continued for 7 days. Peace offerings were sacrificed, and the people gave thanks to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. The entire assembly then decided to continue the festival another 7 days, so they celebrated joyfully for another week. King Hezekiah gave the people 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for offerings, and the officials donated 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. Meanwhile, many more priests purified themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, including the priests, the Levites, all who came from the land of Israel, the foreigners who came to the festival, and all those who lived in Judah. There was a great joy in the city, for Jerusalem had not seen a celebration like this one since the days of Solomon, King David's son. Then the priests and Levites stood and blessed the people, and God heard their prayer from his holy dwelling in heaven. That is today's reading of 2 Chronicles chapters 28, 29, and 30. I do not have anything in particular that comes to mind that makes me want to crack open this Bible dictionary. So on that note, I am going to pray for the people, very much like the Levites did, although I ain't no priest. And I'm going to say, thank you, Lord. This is the day that the Lord has made. You, Lord, I will rejoice. Yes, 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 yes. And be glad in it. Lord, I pray that all who listen to this Bible reading today, tomorrow, and whenever will be encouraged and motivated to read the Bible in their own time, so they can come to their own understanding and build their own relationship with you, strengthen their own faith, and find their own purpose through you and live the best life. That is my prayer. Amen. Amen. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of the week. I will see you tomorrow, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. That is Texas time. So check your local time and synchronize it with Texas time, and we shall be reading the Bible together.